And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome here as we get set for playoffs for the newly named Veterans of Foreign War Cup Series. Getting ready to kick off the playoffs here at the Lady in Black, the track too tough to tame. This is Darlington Raceway. 16 drivers begin the journey to try and make it into the Final Four to compete for this season's championships. And what a race to have to kind of maybe tackle here today. Maybe to lock yourself into the next round of the playoffs. I'm Seth Cole alongside of Samuel Dyer. Sam, we got to see the Rapid Fire Pizza National Series drivers here at Darlington last night. We talked with some of the Cup Series drivers that ran there last night of what they could take away from last night's event to tonight's event. What can we take away from last night's event to apply to tonight's 184-lapper?
I think it's the fact that these drivers are going to be loose almost all race long, and that's just something to expect once these tires start to get worn down the more that we go on with these drivers. I'm also expecting to see fuel mileage be a key for these drivers if we can stay green, because it is going to be a lot for these drivers. Darlington is one of those really bipolar tracks where it's either a very long green flag run type of racetrack or we have a caution fest.
Four playoff contenders up in the first two rows. Caden Rush, our Sonoma winner, on the pole here for the first playoff race. Alongside of him is 10-time winner Boyd Hogan, who comes into this race with 30 playoff points. So right now looks like he just has to be very smooth here for the first round to be able to advance into the second round of the playoffs. Row 2 is where you find another former winner from Pocono, that being Richard Reagan Jr., and then Joseph Piscota, who made it in on points. And it's going to be interesting to see here as well. There are a number of drivers that made it into the playoffs just through consistency through the point stands, but never found victory lane. I mean, you got to think the pressure is on them here in not only this race, but also at Richmond and Bristol for the first round to kind of counter all those drivers that came into this race with the playoff points.
Yeah, I mean, the drivers with the playoff points, they're obviously going to take up your top about 5 of the points. But consistency for these drivers that pointed their way in, I think that's a straight advantage on their part, because they know how hard it is, and they've been through that pressure of trying to just make it in and be consistent at the very end of the season. I think that is a good advantage for these drivers up here. And the nerves might be taken down as pace car rolls off. We're about to go green here at Darlington.
Darlington has the throwback race, so the throwback schemes are in full force tonight. We'll cover them during the course of this race. Plenty of time to do it as 184 laps here at Darlington begins.
And just like that, you're going to be seeing Caden Rush being shoved by Richard Reagan Jr. on that inside. The 2-car already getting a Darlington stripe for Boyd Hogan up on the outside wall of turn 1.
One thing that Boyd Hogan told us pre-race is that the aero push is going to be something these drivers are going to have to deal with all race long. Everybody's going to be fighting for that clean air out in the front of the field.
And Caden Rush, really, during practice, has been the car to watch out for. Richard Reagan Jr., someone at every single oval we're at, I think is a favorite as well. But, I mean, Boyd Hogan, it's third place at the moment. It doesn't matter how he starts the race off. By the end, he is always up there in our top 3.
Caden Rush running the throwback here tonight, back to a prototype paint that he ran back in July of 2019. For Flying Arrows Racing, as now he's got his hands full. Richard Reagan Jr. to the inside, to the race lead in the 17 car, but Rush trying to battle back again on that outside line.
Yeah, that outside line through 1 and 2 is so strong. It's here through 3 and 4, you kind of get a little nervous. That's the narrower side of the track where you got to use a little bit more brake and try to angle your car perfectly. It's contact up front as both the double 0 and 17 hit each other.
And Richard Reagan Jr. fortunately able to save it. He gets into Caden Rush, puts him up into the wall. We got some early tempers flaring here or something.
And Piscota as well as Hogan get into one another. And here comes the 10 of Spencer Tart coming in and trying to make a pass for second place as Richard Reagan Jr. starts to pull away. And I don't think Rush is in a safe spot right now as the 10's getting by, the 96 gets by, and finally they get into single file action. But that is not what you want to see for the double 0 and the 2.
And that first little brush that Caden Rush had in the outside wall didn't look like that would affect him, but then when he got pretty much punted up into the outside wall after getting hooked off the nose of Richard Reagan Jr., he's got some pretty significant right front damage, and we'll have to see how that affects him for the remainder of this race. As Spencer Tart, you mentioned, never really lifted. He kept his foot in the throttle, split the gap. He's now up to second in that Mark Martin throwback. The number 10 car coming into this race, currently in the playoffs in the 16th position, was, I believe, the only driver that did not get any playoff points towards the championship. So really going to have to work hard here in this first round.
Yeah, it's Spencer Tart, one of those drivers that looks quick during practice. So excited to see what this 10 machine has. One of the top 3 drivers during practice. And we had Boyd Hogan on top of the board during practice. And then you had Chad Koonsman, who is not running, did not have a good qualifying lap. Actually starting in the back of the field 16th right now. So we'll have to wait and see how the long run works for that 22 machine.
Boyd Hogan in the Rusty Wallace throwback. That blue deuce. Trying to make a move there on Caden Rush. And Rush, actually, I thought he only had the right front damage. You can see there's obviously a lot of left front damage on that machine as well. And Darlington's not exactly one of those real aerodynamically dependent racetracks, but you got to think at least along the way, that damage is going to probably tighten the race car up. And you don't really want to have a tight car, especially down in 3 and 4.
Yeah, I mean, I believe it was last week when iRacing had their NIS, otherwise known as NASCAR iRacing Series, and that's when the drivers really come out and they do a full 300-lap race here at Darlington. And I was on board with some of those racers during those races, and those cars were junked up and looked terrible, but if they still had the same amount of power as everyone else, they could still run just as quick, even if they're all beat up.
There's Ty McWhirter in the 96, running a throwback to Gaunt Brothers Racing's 2019 scheme from the NASCAR Cup Series. McWhirter, former winner this season. I believe it was Kansas where he got his victory. Thusly comes into this race 10th in the overall standings. His 3 playoff points for that victory were the only playoff points that he got in the reformatted standings.
Yeah, looking at some other action that's going on track besides our front runners, you've also now got Piscotah getting by Rush for 6th place, but I also was watching these battles going back around 8th place, where you've got the 24, the 11, and the 6, all running very close to one another.
Vincent Arthur, saw him take the checkered flag in last night's Rapid Fire Pizza National Series race for Junior Motorsports. Now back with Hedrick Motorsports here this evening in the very noticeable DuPont Star Wars 24, the Jeff Gordon scheme that ran back in 2005, trying to hold off Taylor Butcher Benjamin, our regular season points champion.
And early troubles hits the 42 machine of Tom Drayling, who looks like hit the wall coming out of 2 extremely hard, possibly. Actually, no, the engine blew on the 42.
Wow.
Tom Drayling's race is over in smoke 10 laps into this race.
Tom Drayling and that Kyle Petty throwback. Looks like he is going to be the first retiree of the race. One driver did not start the event. A driver that we have seen week after week be a prime contender up there for the win. That's the 27 of Dalton Collins. So we'll wait to see if he ends up getting out on track. Right now he is 11 laps down, as up at the front, Richard Reagan Jr. continues to lead. It is Fords 1, 2, 3 with Tartan second, Boyd Hogan in third, but we've still got some good battling going on inside the top 5 as Joseph Piscotah seems to be the man on the mission. That Jimmy Johnson throwback, number 9.
Yeah, Piscotah's been doing a pretty good job of running well and finding that rhythm to finally start moving forward. Other machines that are running quicker, just as quick or even quicker, York as well as Boyd Hogan, they are catching our front 2. As Boyd Hogan right on the back bumper, Spencer Tart ducking it inside. That 2 machine, fastest car on track. Someone to watch out for. Another surprise car that's one of them has a really fast machine, but running further back in the field. It's actually going to be the 6th car back in 8th place.
Justin Levine also running a Mark Martin throwback. And we saw Levine actually was pretty fast last week. When we were at the regular season finale at Daytona. We were kind of looking at him as maybe one of the dark horse drivers to maybe be able to sneak out a victory. And right now, a solid outing inside of the top 10, currently in the 8th position. Driver that has fallen back, and really no surprise, is Caden Rush. He's now back to the 7th position, and if we look in terms of his lap times, really interestingly enough, he's actually running lap times just around the same as Boyd Hogan and Joseph Piscota, who are two of the fastest ones out there. So a little bit surprised with the fact that that car is still being able to turn as fast lap times as he is.
It really is, and it seems like every single time Boyd Hogan passes a car, so does Piscota. Is that 9 machine up to 4th place now? Car that's just struggling in the back that we're not used to seeing all the way back here is the car in 17th position. The 47 of Oscar Jensen. That 47 machine is struggling. Has been beating and banging off the wall and almost sliding into it again.
Well, one thing that he had to deal with coming to the green flag, he was having some internet connection issues, and with having to drop back for that, might have put him back in traffic and is causing the arrow push that we heard drivers say that they were experiencing as he's trying to reel in the Bobby Labonte throwback. That's the 3 of Greg Newsom for the 16th position.
Well, it was looking like there was about to be a hornet's nest. Whoa, McWhorter gets a little bit of contact by Zach York. Now that 96, excuse me, able to save it as York having more issues. Here comes Caden Rush moving his way up to 6th place.
Boy, Zach York has clobbered his right front. You can see it is pushed in on the nose and just in front of the right front tire. And he's got a lot more damage than I think even Caden Rush has. He may have taken the hardest hit so far.
Our leader! Richard Reagan Jr. off of 4 absolutely destroys the wall, bounces into the inside wall, and it's out of the race.
Oh my goodness. That's a playoff contender too, and Richard Reagan Jr., who came into this race after the reformatted points, 9th in the playoff standings. 12 drivers will move on when the checkered flag waves at Bristol Motor Speedway in 3 weeks. And Richard Reagan Jr., boy, I'm not really sure if there's an explanation for what happened to him. We'll go back and think we can look at a replay here or something.
He just got loose out of 4. He'd already gotten passed by Boyd, and he just got loose, tried to save it, overcorrected his car, and away he went.
Take a look here on the replay. I mean, did he manually disconnect while spinning? Did he fall out while spinning? That's what the big question is.
It looked like he just manually, it was a flick. He hit the outside wall and then the inside and then inside again. And once he came to a stop, just manually disconnected out of the race. Other vehicle that disconnected, Oscar Jensen, he is disconnected out of this race. A lot of machines cannot hold off, and there's a hornet's nest that is being collected up from 7th on back. That is a total of 6 machines all on top of one another, and I don't like it.
This is where we would call the eye of the storm. St. Arthur leading this group. Curtis Sawyer there in the 12 machine, trying to get around Taylor Butcher Benjamin. Curtis Sawyer throwing it back to Todd Bodine's Tabasco machine. Right behind him, you've got the Jeff Burton throwback, the 13 of John Mullins.
And these drivers, Sawyer's been trying to get by Arthur this whole entire time, but just hasn't been catching up to the 24 at the right moment to really make a slide job move. And then in these corners, trying to make it down the back stretches. Here it comes again for the 12. Gonna be going for the inside line, and we'll see if we can make the pass here for 7th place, and we'll get it done. Finally by the 24 machine. We'll see if maybe it was Arthur that was holding up everyone, or if everyone's just that quick, because here comes the 13 again.
Not really sure what's going on with our timing and scoring. It's got the 11 car scored all the way back in the 11th position, which I think is now where he's fallen back to. But he was up in the 8th position, and they had him still scored back in 11th. So fortunately, that has settled out. That's Vincent Arthur. My goodness, that 12 car. It's hard to tell if he brushes the wall there off the corner, trying to get that run in the straightaway or not. He's awfully close if he isn't.
Yeah, he's extremely close, and looking like also Ryan Strunk making a charge forward, but I think Vincent Arthur, he's been slipping and sliding and getting loose off the corner multiple times, and I think he might be finally wearing down those tires enough to where the rest of the field is finally overpassed him in pace.
Well, up here in this group at least, it looks like the only battle is between Sawyer and Arthur for that position, as now Sawyer will take it. We're going to drop back, take a look at a few more of our throwback schemes. And of course, when you come to Darlington Raceway, there's got to be a Ricky Craven throwback in the field somewhere. Justin Carey in the 21, throwing it back to the 2003 Darlington winner when that Tide Pontiac was able to out drag race the Rubbermaid Ford of Kurt Busch back in that spring 2003 Darlington race.
Yeah, that Tide machine, always a good one to put down, and I think it's just a favorite for a lot of drivers to see, unless you're a Kurt Busch fan, and then you kind of get a little bit of trauma from seeing that paint scheme, as Caden Rush able to make a pass here on Spencer Tart, almost making contact between the two drivers, and Rush has had a rough day, but man, I am so surprised to see some of these top guys. I mean, I thought Collins would have been running this race, was not able to even start this race. You've got Richard Reagan Jr. taken out immediately, and Caden Rush with all of his adventures he's gone through. And I think the one consistent that we're used to seeing is Boyd Hogan up front, as he's continuing to do so.
Definitely is, and while he is leading, and while he does have a 4-second advantage, something that we saw in the early portions of yesterday's race, and it applies here today, the tire fall off. That last time by, 2.1 seconds slower than his fastest lap was Boyd Hogan.
Yeah, and that is going to be an advantage for these drivers once pit road opens up, which should be around lap 45 to 50. These drivers will be thinking about pitting. And around that time, we will see who is going to be short pitting and who's not. As a car on the move, looks like that's Zach York able to get by Spencer Tart again. I think Tart's just on a losing spree, as that 10 machine, I think his tires have finally dropped off.
Yeah, this is around the point of the race where we start to see who has been able to save their tires and who hasn't. Caden Rush with his damage, Zach York with his damage, both still able to make at least some forward progress. Tart, he got the wall pretty good there off of 4 and nearly almost had the same kind of identical spin that Richard Reagan Jr. had earlier on.
Yeah, and that's the difference between a spin on the front stretch and a spin on the back stretch. Back stretch, you have just a little bit more space to work with. Front stretch, you have that pit road wall that really makes it difficult to try to save a machine once you get loose. But with Tart running so slow, he's kind of doing the same thing that we were seeing Vincent Arthur doing, of kind of slowing down everyone, getting everyone clogged up, and really close to everybody.
York going to complete the pass on Spencer Tart. Move him up to the 5th position, as behind them, John Mullins, that 13 car. I think the last time we looked at him, he was back around the 9th, 10th position. He's all of a sudden up here looking for a spot up inside of the top 5 potentially.
Yeah, car that I'm surprised has dropped back is actually the 6, who we were seeing start moving up this field, is dropped all the way down to 11th place. And that's probably my biggest surprise, besides Spencer Tart, who's dropping back quick and almost makes contact with the 11 machine, as Tart is struggling right now as he's losing more and more positions every lap.
One driver that I think he's running a throwback, but I'm not 100% certain, is the 22 of Chad Gunisman. This scheme looks very similar to a Bobby Allison scheme.
Hard into the wall is Gunisman.
And that's going to lose him a ton of time, but I think he's throwing back to the Bobby Allison scheme. I'm not 100% certain, because Bobby Allison's scheme also had a star back in front of the rear tires, and the 22 car does not. So I don't know if this is one of his regular schemes for the season, or if indeed this is supposed to be a Bobby Allison throwback. But we'll call it an Allison throwback for now, I guess.
Still, I am nervous watching where Spencer Tart is. Almost the Mark Martin schemes ran into one another and able to finally single file out. But there was a couple of moments there where they almost both got sideways into one another.
Curtis Sawyer now trying to see if he can get around Justin Levine. That would be for 9th, as Tart now going to get bypassed by Taylor Butcher Benjamin. And that 10 car, I think that we could safely say when that fuel window opens, or at least that window opens for tires, like you said, I think that 10 car might be one of the first ones to duck onto pit road.
I would say so. It's just not looking good for himself. It's looking worse and worse every lap of just trying to save the machine. And that's one of the things here at Darlington is your car, when those tires are gone or about to go away, your car might feel snug and good, and you're able to just hold your line and feel comfortable, and then it will just randomly snap on you and get loose in the middle of the corner, and you have to be aware at all times that your car could possibly get loose and you entering or in the middle of a corner. And I think that's what we're seeing from Tart, is it's finally gone past the point of no return, and now it's I got to stay on this thing every single lap.
We also got to keep an eye on the weather as well and the track conditions because in last night's race, we were talking, I believe it was to Evan Longacre, and he said that his car felt fine for the beginning of the race. We documented that towards the end of the race, shadows started creeping in. I think you brought up the fact the track temp was going down. He didn't even realize that. He thought, what's going on? Why doesn't my car feel the same way that it did before? And it was because of the track changing itself. So not only do you have to keep up with the adjustments of your race car, but you also have to keep up with the changing weather conditions.
Yeah, there's some drivers that like it when it's hot and slick, and for the rapid fire national guys, I mean, it's one of those things where I know Logan Elton loves it when his car is snappy loose, and other drivers love it when it's snug, and it's just going to get more and more snug as the night goes on. And for some drivers, it's going to work out great for their setup. For others, they've got to try to adjust on the spot. As another machine into the pits, that's going to be the 3 of Greg Newsom, and he's been in there for a bit, but another car being swallowed up by this track.
Greg Newsom currently 6 laps down to the leaders. A very lengthy pit stop for the Bobby Labonte throwback as Boyd Hogan continues to show the way. We're nearing 40 laps into this race. Surprisingly, we have actually had no caution. It hasn't been without incident. We've had a lot of sheet metal ruffled up here in these first 40 laps, but we have been able to avoid a yellow flag up to this point, and we ended up having a couple of really long green flag runs in last night's National Series race.
Yeah, that one was more of after about 28 laps, those tires would just be killer. But also something that was brought up by Vincent Arthur that had a great run last night is the fact that he brought up it's a lot easier racing these Cup cars compared to the National Series machines. So these drivers enjoying the Cup cars a lot more, and they could probably stay out there for probably another 5 to 15 laps, and that's when the window will open for these drivers, and then they'll start thinking, hey, when do I really want to come in? Because the tires, there is a limit on how many tires you can utilize for this race.
7 in total, 7 sets in total available to these drivers. Vincent Arthur putting a bit of a block there on Ryan Strunk. These two have been mixing it up for the 7th position the last few laps. The DuPont Pepsi Chevrolet and the Z's Custom Diecast Chevrolet there. Both playoff contenders as well. Ryan Strunk, actually, former leader of the points, is wow!
Oh,
I don't know
contact!
if it gets into Vincent Arthur. I don't know if he drove it in or if that car, the back end, snapped around on him and forced him to go in that fast.
He said over the radio, he just dug. He came in way too deep and thought he could scrub off the speed by sliding it in there, and just was not able to, using the 24 kind of as a buffer, and hurting Vincent Arthur way more than he was expecting to.
You can see that right rear damage now, just around the Tyvek logo on the back of the 24 car, but you could clearly see for Ryan Strunk that was not what he intended to do, getting into Vincent Arthur as he backed off, let Arthur gather the car back up, and now it's going to be a 3, maybe 4-way battle for this 8th position, as Justin Levine got by, but you got Curtis Sawyer and Taylor Butcher Benjamin now up in the neighborhood.
Yeah, and it's so difficult when you kind of get into that incident. I mean, in the mindset of Vincent Arthur, when you get hit like that, you're still running. You gotta try to reset your mind, but it's so hard when the car that just slammed in you is still behind you and was almost about to hit you again.
This is the best battle on the track right now, from about the 8th position on back, with Arthur, Sawyer, Strunk, and Benjamin. As up at the front, maybe the closest battle is for second place, half a second between Piscota and McWhirter, but it's been that way for about the last 10 to 15 laps.
Yeah, those drivers running very similar lap times for second and third, Piscota and McWhirter, and they're running just a tenth off of what our leader, Boyd Hogan, is. And Boyd's just continuing to pull away. That gap up to almost 8 seconds now, and Boyd is just feeling comfortable out there. As it's hard to see him really have any issues. As the last couple of laps I've watched, he's looked fantastic, and it's really looking like Boyd Hogan, all his competition kind of wrecked themselves out of this thing. Is also going back to the 24 machine, him almost getting into the wall again, and it's looking rough in the middle of the field.
Vincent Arthur spent most of the national race last night up inside of the top 5, actually most of the night up in the top 3, before eventually his pit crew got him out first for a late race restart. He was able to hold on and take the checkered flag, but certainly in a lot more traffic here this evening in that DuPont Chevrolet at Hendrick Motorsports. And I was looking up here at Boyd Hogan, and one thing that we talked about leading up to the playoffs was the fact that Hogan had so many wins. So we saw him kind of go outside the box in terms of pit strategy to try and pick up more wins and more playoff points. He's got 38 playoff points coming into this first round. Does he maybe try and go outside the box in terms of strategy again here today? Or now that the playoffs have begun, is he going to basically just try and run a regular type race?
I think in Boyd Hogan's mind, it's stick to the strategy that I've made. We're still green, so whatever plan we had originally, we're still staying with it. But there has been a planned pit stop as the 20 of Chris Hansen going to be pitting, and our first, planned pit stop on lap 45 for that machine. We'll see if anyone else starts to come in, but that window has now just opened for everybody.
Tony Stewart, Coca-Cola Home Depot throwback on that 20 of Chris Hansen. And also we're on lap 48, which is when we ended up seeing, if I remember correctly, I think it was our second caution of the night in last night's event. And that was after these guys had gone into a long green flag run. And I'm starting to see a lot of drivers really sliding up and getting the wall in the corners now. So we may end up seeing our first yellow flag of the evening somewhere around this vicinity.
Boyd Hogan, we're going to see a caution, though. It's going to be around that 6th position as the 6, 19, and the 12 have all just gotten all really close to one another and almost made contact.
Yeah, tires are worn down, so side-by-side racing is going to be even sketchier going into these corners as Sawyer and York going to drag races to the line. Give it to York there at the start-finish line for the moment. Oh boy, that 12 almost pushing up into the 19. Now Vincent Arthur going to get up into the vicinity along with Ryan Strong.
And I'm just looking at the lap times that are being placed for these drivers, and the more I'm thinking, if we stay green and no one has pitted, Boyd Hogan is about 5 to 10. He's about 10 laps away from catching up to this group of cars as he is already put up to 13. About to be position number 12 down a lap.
Boyd Hogan gave us the fuel window about 65 to 67 laps. The question is just what do the tires look like up at that point in time?
Oh my, 3 wide. Vincent Arthur is taking two, trying to pass 2, but that is a risky move by that 24 machine.
Well, that dotted white line down there is just a guideline showing you where the banking of the apron and the high banking of the turns are where the separation is. But you can go down there if you so choose, and Arthur was willing to take the risk going down below that dotted white line, trying that 3-wide formation. Somehow we got through it without a whole bunch of cars torn up.
Well, Vincent Arthur, got to give credit to him. He really did back it down, as well as York. He tried to woe up, but I think that Sawyer just said, I'm going to floor it, this thing, and hope that it sticks so I can get by all you guys. But now another driver that's dropping back. We saw Tart be the first one of our front runners dropping back. It looks like Zach York, the next victim of tires just being very vicious on these machines.
Yeah, I'll tell you what he's lost, and that's rear grip. That 19 has been fishtailing into the entry of the corner for the last 4 laps or so. And as those those rear tires get worn down, that really hurts your entry speed because you're afraid that thing's going to loop around on you. And then when you try to go and catch it, next thing you know, you're up into the outside wall. So right now, Zach York just trying to hold on as he nearly comes down to his teammate, Taylor Butcher-Benjamin, who's trying to take the 10th position.
And York, who's running in the top 5, feeling comfortable, is now in 11th. And guess what? He's the next victim to be put a lap down because Boyd Hogan is coming.
Boyd Hogan setting a blistering pace in that 2 machine. There you can see out his windshield what he's looking at. That was the pass just moments ago of Butcher-Benjamin getting around Zach York. And, you know, Darlington's not necessarily known for really, really long green flag runs. You gotta wonder, just based on the pace that we've been set here and the fact that the field has gotten so spread out, how many cars are we going to have at the end of this race on the lead lap?
I mean, I would like to say that cars been getting spread out, but really it's been clusters of machines. It's coming into the pits. It's a 24 car.
Vincent Arthur and bring that DuPont Chevy onto pit road. Will be interesting to see if they decide to do any work on that right rear quarter panel, the damage that he sustained, but lap 56 when he's bringing his Hendrick Motorsports Chevrolet to pit road. Chris Noble in the 8, also on pit lane.
I mean, really, where the spread out part begins is our top 5, really, on how spread out they have been going into. But from 5th on back, they've been anywhere from a second to 2 seconds at most, but they have been all over the place as Zach York giving that position easily to Boyd Hogan. And Hogan now has started lapping our top 10.
Chad Goodisman on pit road in the 22. And Justin Carey now going to bring his Tide Ford onto pit lane also. You know, for Boyd Hogan as well, one thing he's also been able to do here on this run has been able to work traffic really well. Has been able to catch them in pretty decent areas to be able to get around them. We saw just a moment ago when he got around Zach York, York getting up into the wall and Boyd Hogan able to make an easy pass there. But as he gets further and further towards the top 10, the top 5, these passes are not going to be quite as easy.
No, and I think there's a lot of respect for these drivers and understanding, hey, Boyd is a lot quicker as Boyd's pulling in our leader into the pits.
Boyd Hogan bringing that number 2 machine down pit road, coming to the completion of lap 58. So he was the one that gave us the number about 66 laps that you could make it on fuel, but apparently he is not going to stretch it that far, especially with the fact that he's got this race pretty well in hand as far as the interval he had between himself at second place.
And this is when things are going to get nerve-wracking for these drivers. Piscota as well as McWhorter staying out. So you're going to have a lot of fast lap-down machines trying to get their lead back, doing it the hard way. And they're going to be flying past most of these machines as Piscota and McWhorter coming in at the same time.
Top 2 going to hit pit road, the Chevy and the Toyota. Caden Rush, who started on the pole, let's see what he does. He's going to stay out an extra lap in that 00.
Ryan Strunk as well in 77 following suit and coming into the pits, but Rush staying out.
Like Curtis Sawyer going to bring his Penske Ford down pit lane. Been a while since we've seen 3 Penske Fords in a race. We're used to just seeing Goodisman in the 22, Hogan in the 2 car, but Sawyer's been doing a pretty good job here today as well.
Yeah, Sawyer has had a lot of promise in this pace that he's got. He's just been kind of stuck around that big pack of machines in the middle of the pack that just have not been able to get moving anywhere. You know, we talked about when we were seeing drivers dropping back, you brought out, you know, maybe Spencer Tart will be the first one to come into the pits. He is still out there and still fishtailing it all over the place.
Yeah, I'm really surprised about that. And I think some of these guys, the reason they're staying out is, you know, if you look at Caden Rush, he's got everyone but the top 5 put a lap down. If by some miracle a caution comes out, most of those drivers would have to take a wave around. That's a lot of track position gain for a driver that had sustained some early damage.
I think the most wildest thing is Boyd Hogan had such a large lead on the rest of the field that even after he pitted, he's still in the lead lap.
Yeah, he's currently 19 seconds behind Caden Rush. And right now, on those fresher tires, will be reeling in the top 4. So, yeah, Boyd Hogan right now, things are definitely looking like they are going in the direction of that 2 car going to victory lane. But again, we're only a third of the way through this race, and it's Darlington. So with those 2 things bear in mind, we can't be picking a winner just yet.
No, absolutely not. And, you know, there is still always the chance. I mean, we even saw this last night where we had front runners caught up with incidences with lap machines. So it is still very possible to see someone else having issues out here. As speaking of issues, it looks like the 12 might have had issues.
I think he might have spun there off of turn 2. Much like what happened with Richard Reagan Jr., though, it was down away from the racing line, and so a caution was not thrown.
Oh, that is a vicious hit for the 12, who did not look like even tried to slow down. Went from full speed to almost completely stopping after hitting the inside wall.
You see Joseph Piscota, he's in the 6th position. First car 1 lap down. Now he'll get back in the lead lap as Caden Rush. Oh, that car is fishtailing down there on the apron. Nearly coming around on him as he's going to hit pit lane.
And he got woed up enough for pit road speed. That double zero machine, and it's going to be nerve-wracking for these drivers. It is. Darlington's pit entry is deceptive, just because of how much space you have to get down there. But it is very narrow to enter into that spot. Is Curtis Sawyer, just when we were talking about him, I think it's the caster's curse that hits the 12 machine because his day is done after parking it.
Justin Levine going to stay out a little bit longer here as Spencer Tart already passed for second place by Boyd Hogan. He's still yet to pit as well. And it looks like we've only got two drivers, the 10 and the 6, that need to pit before this cycle is over. But you look at Boyd Hogan and the gap between himself and Joseph Piscota, who will undoubtedly cycle around second. When we looked prior to the pit stops, it was about 9 seconds. It's going to be somewhere in the region of about, 15 seconds between Hogan and Piscota once everything cycles.
If this race stays green, Boyd Hogan is going to lap every single driver in this field.
Spencer Tart.
If we stay green.
Tart to pit road in the 10 car. That just leaves the 6 to come to pit road to complete this cycle. And looks like he's stretching it to the lap that we were told, lap 67.
Which, looking where Piscota's at, you're right, 15.3 seconds is the gap. And Boyd Hogan he only has one lap older tires than Piscota, so we'll see if the 2 machine can continue to pull away, or if that one lap is going to be massive for the 9 machine to somehow start chipping away at this lead, because it is huge.
Now here's the thing that I'm looking at. If drivers are planning on 2-stopping this race, they'd want to at least go about 61 to 62 laps on a run. If we look at this 2-car of Boyd Hogan, he came to pit road back on lap 59. So in order to ensure that he's going to be able to make it the rest of the way, he will not be able to come to pit road any earlier than, I would say, lap, I think it's 112, 113, something like that.
Yeah, it's going to be asking for a lot, but I think it is possible for the 2 because he has such a massive lead at this point. He can actually let off and be in cruise control in a way, but he's going to have to drive through quite a bit of traffic here as he is catching up to some cars on the end of the lead lap as he's coming up to the 13 machine.
That's John Mullins, who is in the 5th position. Right now, only the top 5 drivers are on the lead lap. And if Boyd Hogan continues his pace, we're going to be down to 4 drivers that are currently on the lead lap, as Piscota's 2nd, McWhirter 3rd, Arthur right now in 4th, and Mullins trying to hang on to the tail end of the lead lap just ahead of Hogan in the 5th position. We're more than the third of the way through this race, halfway coming up very shortly. We're going to step aside for our first commercial break here tonight as you're watching Darlington Raceway Racing here for the VFW Cup Series. You won't miss a thing. We're going to go Flatout Racing Network side by side.
to make sure that our nation upholds its promise to really care for the service member, the veteran, and his or her family. There are several ways that the VFW fights for veterans today. The top services include disability claims assistance, advocacy on Capitol Hill and with the Department of Veterans Affairs. We also offer scholarship opportunities, and then also volunteerism. For me personally, when I came back from Iraq, my life experience was drastically different from those around me, and the veterans of foreign wars really spoke to me. The reason I would encourage veterans who have served overseas today to join the VFW is because this is your organization. The VFW is for veterans. Every generation, a new generation of leaders steps up in the veterans of foreign wars and fights for the veterans community.
The Veterans of Foreign Wars. No one does more for veterans. For more information on the VFW, go to ahctv.com/sacrifice.
First caution of the night here at Darlington Raceway. You saw it happen live. Contact between Justin Levine, who was really rocking his way through the field, getting into the 77 of Ryan Strunk, the 19 of Zach York getting a piece of it as well.
It's one of those things of, I'm trying to see if it's netcode or just misjudgment by the 6. But, I mean, it was a little bit of the 6 just never, like, he was trying to get the best angle he could, but at the same time, Strunk ran into the outside wall because he was being pushed up there.
Boy, and that shot he took at the outside wall, that whole right front tire came up off the ground, and I said that Zach York got a piece of it. He might have actually narrowly missed it. If he did get any damage, it was very minimal. I thought he had actually clobbered the 77.
It's a good thing that this is an online race because he went straight through the front bumper of the 77. We'll have to wait and see if he got any engine damage for that 19 machine, but he got some damage there.
Now, just when that caution came out, we saw the 24, Vincent Arthur, had been put a lap down. He will be the recipient of the free pass, leaving us 5 drivers currently on the lead lap. I very much doubt that a lot of drivers will probably take the wave around just due to the fact that a number of these guys that would be eligible for it have been out there from 15 to 25 laps on their set of tires.
I think the only driver I think would have thought about going in and doing a wave around would have been the 20 machine who just came in the pits before that caution, but Chris Hansen looks like he actually had even more issues getting into the wall, putting him even more laps down.
Entire top 5, or top 4, I should say, on pit lane. Hogan, Pascoda, McWhirter, and Mullins. Everybody else will wait to see if they decide to come to pit road this next time around. Vincent Arthur will undoubtedly be coming to pit road. He has to pit the lap after being the recipient of the free pass, and we'll see if anybody else follows him onto pit lane or not.
Ooh. Vincent Arthur staying out.
Which I'm a little confused about because he would be the lucky dog driver. Although, maybe Vincent Arthur is thinking about saving a couple of sets of tires for the closing stages of this race, and now he's got pit road.
Yeah. Not surprised. What I am surprised about, though, is if we continue staying green, that 2 machine was going to lap everyone down.
Yeah.
That is ridiculous. You don't really get to see it very often when a whole entire field goes 1 lap down. But with having green flag pit stops and everyone off sequence just a little bit here and there, that is something we're expecting to see. Drivers with better tires running faster than the other drivers that are on older ones, and it will cause that incident that we saw that brought out the caution where a driver misjudges on how much that closing rate is and making contact due to that. But that was a weird incident just as a whole because I think those drivers would have been all right, but with Ryan Strunk initially hitting the wall that pushed him into the 6, that's what really caused that accident to really unfold the way that it did, but also the six was kind of smothering Ryan Shrunk.
So we got 4 drivers that are going to be trying to take the wave around here. For 3 of them, it will put them back on the lead lap. Taylor Butcher Benjamin, who's been out there for 16 laps. Spencer Tart, who's been out there for 13 laps. And Chad Goodisman, who's been out there for 25 laps. At 42 car, last time we saw him, his engine blew and he was on pit road. Tom Drayling, now he's back out here. I don't know how they were able to get that car refired back up and back out on the racetrack, but let's not forget, Tom Drayling is a playoff driver, and there are 2 drivers ahead of him that have DNF from this race, Richard Reagan Jr. and Oscar Jensen. If he completes 3 more laps, he jumps from 20th to 18th in the finishing results. Every point in the playoff counts.
And here's the thing, he's 13 laps away. If Greg Newsom can't get that machine fixed up here, we could be seeing Tom Drayling taking that position, as well with Curtis Sawyer not racing. Another about 30 laps after he passes Newsom, he'll be able to get another position, moving himself up to 16th. And if that 20 machine can't get himself fixed up, we'll be seeing a top 15 finish for a car that blew up 10 laps into this race.
Yeah, how does that happen? How does a car manage to get back out there and run when the engine is exploded?
Well, you have to wait a long time, and some drivers, they just don't feel patient enough and feel like, hey, it's not worth it to be out there. But as a playoff driver, I mean, Tom Drayling has to try to fight for every single position, every point that he can. And with some of the struggles we've seen other drivers have, this is the best opportunity that this 42 had. I think if he didn't see so many drivers having issues, he probably would not have come back out onto the track. But due to the fact that so many cars have had issues, and we are not even at the halfway point yet, it is worth getting back out there on track.
This is going to be the closest everyone has been to each other since the green flag to start this race was flown. So it'll be interesting to see just how aggressive this restart will be. We saw a pretty aggressive start of the race, but we did not see a caution come out for any of the incidents. So we'll see how long it takes for the second caution of the night to fly here, as Boyd Hogan, Ty McWhirter, John Mullins, and Joseph Piscota, they are your lead lap cars, your front rows here. You've also got some drivers that are at the rear of the field taking the wave around, as well as the lucky dog recipient Vincent Arthur. So row 3 on back are all lap machines who at the same time are also battling for positions on track.
Yeah, it's going to be battling all over the race, and it's going to be chaotic here as we're getting everybody set up to go green again. I'm nervous to see how that middle of the field's going to run again, because we saw how chaotic they were for the first about 20 to 40 laps. They were all on top of one another. And pace car rolls off. We'll see if they can save their tempers, because there's some drivers out there that have some issues with other people.
Yeah, absolutely. Boyd Hogan up through the gears, going to pull away easily. Beautiful jump for that blue deuce as he's got 4 car lengths in hand heading to turn 1. Now the battle's going to be for second between McWhirter and Piscota.
Also, the car to watch out for is a lap down is the 6 machine, who is fighting to get that lucky dog position, and he's quick. And Levine is going to be someone that really is going to try to fight his way through the field and get up there as quick as possible.
Right now, Levine trying to stay ahead of that bright pink 19 of Zach York. Those are the 2 battling for the free pass position should we get a caution. Caden Rush right there in the 00, also a lap down and in the mix for that lucky dog spot.
As those guys are running as hard as they are, saw the 21, it hit the wall extremely hard and has been having issues throughout this race. We'll see how he can go throughout this run. But these guys are still running extremely hard and up front, and McWhirter, with him getting up to second, that is a lot of hard work that he has been able to get done that he has not been able to do since the drop of the green.
Arthur has been able to cut his way through the field since the green flag dropped. We saw that he just got around Spencer Tart a moment ago. Tart right now is in the 7th position, so only one more driver, the 11 of Taylor Butcher Benjamin, to get around before Vincent Arthur will be able to start passing drivers potentially for position.
He's so close, and oh, Spencer Tart hard into the wall for the 10. He's able to keep on going, but that 10 machine took a hard lick.
The 9 of Joseph Piscota almost went around off the nose of the lap machine of Levine as well, off turn 4, and again the 2 of them almost made contact.
Yeah, Levine is on a mission, and he really doesn't care how he gets forward. He's going to move you, and the best that he can to really get you up front. And I'm not surprised. I mean, he wants to be up there hard charging, but these guys that are racing for the championship and playoffs right now, they are nervous having a car that's that aggressive right now.
I think they're not exactly all that thrilled being raced that hard by a driver that not only is already in the free pass position, but has the free pass spot by over 2 seconds to the next driver he's battling.
Yeah, but I mean, you still want to get yourself on the lead lap the hard way, just so that if a caution comes out, you can restart with everyone else that's on the lead lap, and you don't have to go all the way to the end of the field.
See Ty McWhirter not letting Boyd Hogan get away, at least not for the moment. Only about half a second separation between those two, and Ty McWhirter ended up pulling off a really important victory back earlier on the season, beating Boyd Hogan at his own game on a late race restart, and trying to see if he could take away a win here tonight. Remember, whoever wins here this evening, they go into Richmond next week and Bristol in 2 weeks, knowing they are moving on automatically to the round of 12.
Yeah, and Richmond and Bristol are not very kind tracks. You can be taken out almost instantly at those courses, and they are all pretty much one-lane tracks, just like Darlington. So it's all about getting your setup ready for that race. And really, if your tempers are already flying here today in Darlington, those are some 2 tracks to give a little bit of payback to.
A couple of flying arrows paint schemes, a Starcom Racing Chevrolet and a Joe Gibbs Racing Toyota battling for what would be the 10th position on track. And you've got Chris Noble there in the 8th also trying to battle with these drivers for position. Right behind them, though, is that 24, Vincent Arthur, who's continued to try and fight his way up through the field after getting the lucky dog on our only caution so far tonight.
Yeah, we haven't really talked about Chris Noble, and he's qualified back in 19th position and slowly been working his way forward. And this 8 machine's been keeping his nose clean, out of trouble. And I think someone to watch out for if he can somehow get himself on the lead lap, because if you keep your car clean, there's a chance you could be running well at the end.
And I do apologize. I do believe that Chris Noble is running a throwback scheme here tonight, but there was no post made, and for some reason I cannot pull it in. I keep thinking of the channel lock car, but I don't think that's what the throwback is too, so my apologies for not knowing who it is that 8 car is throwing back to, but pretty slick looking red, white, and blue machine here on Labor Day weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good looking scheme. For myself as well, I'm not sure either. A car that is open for a caution, though, that's going to be Chad Gunsman. That 22 machine, been out there for 38 laps and very close to being put down, a lap down, which the 6 would not love to see.
Absolutely not. Would not like to see that at all, because that would take him out of the free pass position, and I believe there's about 10 seconds between himself and Chad Gunsman right now. We saw an exchange for 6th between Spencer Tart and Taylor Butcher Benjamin. Both of these drivers, much like Chad Gunsman, they want to see a caution, because remember, the 10, the 11, and the 22 all took the waiver round under the caution flag.
Looks like Strunk going to be easily giving that position away. You know, I'm looking drivers, and it is just Boyd Hogan's on a different level compared to everyone else just up front in the way he's running. But I gotta give credit to Ty McWhirter. He's at least trying to keep it close, and maybe it's due to the fact that the sun is starting to set, but that 9 car not looking as strong as it once was before.
Yeah, the gap has not opened up nearly as wide as quickly as it did during the opening segment of this race. But it is slowly, little by little, growing between himself and the 96. Now about 1.8 seconds between himself and the Gaunt Brothers Racing Toyota Camry. If you drop back here a little bit further, that's where you find Joseph Biscotta there in the 3rd position, followed by John Mullins. And, you know, Boyd Hogan, 10 trips to victory lane this season, a ton of playoff points. Ty McWhirter has been to victory lane this season, had some playoff points coming to this one, but Joseph Biscotta had none. Barely made his way into the playoffs last week at Daytona. Could have very well been knocked out had we had a driver eligible go to victory lane in that regular season finale, but now they've got a lot of work to do, and doing very well here today has Biscotta, and up in the top 5 all day long, kind of looking very similar to what we saw him do back at Pocono.
Yeah, really just looking to have a solid day, and A top 3 finish here to start the playoffs off is not a bad start at all. I know everyone out here is chasing the 2 machine, who's just been on a tear all season long. And, I'm excited to see where these drivers are going to be able to battle forward. As Skoda is now, it looks like the 6 finally is tapered off of using up all of his tires and might start drifting on back because he's not looking as quick as he once was.
The two of us have looked at a number of these drivers that advanced into the playoffs, tried to formulate in our own heads who we might think might be making it into the Final Four, and a lot of drivers that we kind of had picked out, they've struggled here today at Darlington, so, they're going to have their work cut out for them when we get to Richmond and at Bristol, if they are not able to combat the poor performances that they're currently on track for here today at Darlington.
Yeah, I think there's only one driver that we both selected that's doing well, and that's got to be Boyd Hogan. And, Ty McWhirter, I think this is probably a great showing for that 96 machine as well in second position, helping himself out and giving a case of, hey, I'm someone still to watch out for, and possibly a driver to be there for the Final Four.
Another driver, Vincent Arthur, kind of has been a little bit of a dark horse driver this season. Limited number of starts, but been very impressive. Finished, if I remember correctly, 3rd in his season debut back at Charlotte. And that was after going through the infield grass twice. He was one of 2 drivers who took part in last night's Rapid Fire Pizza National Series race. Justin Carey was the other. And we saw, of course, Vincent Arthur take the checkered flag in that race. And let's not forget, Sam, it was when we got closer to the evening conditions that we really saw him make his charge up to the front of the field. So maybe here tonight we'll see the same thing. Obviously, right now, his goal to maybe have another caution, get caught up to the lead lap car since he got the free pass. But, maybe he has something in the back of his mind of the conditions of Darlington from last night that he can apply as this race continues to linger on.
Possibly is. These drivers, they're going to try to do their best to make these adjustments. This is an open setup league, so under caution, they can make adjustments to help their machines out. And there's one thing where you can possibly make an adjustment thinking that you're helping your car out, and you can actually make it worse. So these drivers always are thinking and hoping their spotter and crew chiefs are on the same page of trying to help their machines get better throughout the night.
Got a car off the pace here going into turn 3. That's the 77 of Ryan Strunk. Thought he might be bringing that car to pit road, but no, he's just down there on the apron. He's kind of shaking the car back and forth.
He's, at this moment, his car is slow. It's junked up after that caution, and at the moment, just trying to let as many cars go by as possible for the 77, and trying to find some clean position for him to finally get back onto the track.
Currently 6 laps down is Ryan Strunk. Chris Hansen in the 20 is on pit road, has been for a good portion of this last run. I believe he's been on pit road now for 39 laps and currently in the 15th position as Boyd Hogan going to go around Justin Carey, put him another lap down. Right now, of the drivers that got the free pass and took the wave around, we still have 7 of the 8 on the lead lap. Chad Goodisman just got put a lap down again moments ago.
Yeah, and he's got the 6 coming in quick to try to put himself back into the position of the lucky dog spot. But once the 6 gets by the 22, don't look now, but the 11 next on the list of cars to be put a lap down and would be the next car to be our lucky dog's position.
We nearly had ourselves a caution there out of turn 2 as Justin Carey was down on the apron trying to let the drivers by, and the back end of his car almost came around on him.
Yeah, probably getting back onto the gas just a little bit too quick. Zach York into the pits, and that 19 machine. That 19 machine got loose into the wall, it looked like, and he pulled it off and just decided to park that 19 machine.
Zach York out of the race, so right now, that means there are 3 drivers that are playoff contenders out of this race. And we currently have another 3 drivers that are very much so either off the pace or multiple laps down with Ryan Strunk, Chris Hansen, and Tom Drayling. So, they don't call this the track too tough to tame for nothing, and no doubt about it, Darlington is doing its best into molding who the 12 drivers are going to be that advance into the next round of the playoffs.
Yeah, all these drivers are really struggling to find a spot where they could really keep their car clean. And I think a lot of these drivers were expecting this to turn into a caution fest in a way, hoping to use tire strategy in that way of trying to stay up front. But it has not worked out for any of these machines except for Boyd Hogan, Ty McWhirter, and Piscota, as they have been just doing so well today, staying in the top 3 ever since probably lap 20 or 26.
And now Taylor Butcher Benjamin about to go a lap down after trying to stay on the lead lap with the wave around. There is a huge difference in tires between those two, about 15 laps. As you saw Taylor Butcher Benjamin move down to the inside of Boyd Hogan. And, you know, for guys like Taylor Butcher Benjamin and others, this is basically what they've got to do. I mean, they're realizing that tire-wise, they are at a deficit to Boyd Hogan. Speed-wise, they've been at a deficit to Boyd Hogan. So they got to look around them, see who they were racing there in that first run, and basically just kind of single out those drivers to try and finish ahead of.
Yeah, pretty much. That's where we are at. With having more drivers sitting out, it's now Caden Rush has parked it.
And that is another playoff contender, our pole sitter for tonight's race, our Sonoma winner, taking it into the garage area.
Tom Drayling could be finishing in 14th place, possibly, just because he's gotten that car repaired and got back out there.
Well, 74 laps to go. Justin Carey still sits on pit road. Yeah, you're right. There is very likely possibility he could do that. He might actually be able to get up as high as 12th place with York and Caden Rush out of this race. Now, it's all really going to depend on how quickly Tom Drayling turns his laps as opposed to how quickly Boyd Hogan turns his laps. But with 73 to go, Tom Drayling is only 62 laps behind Caden Rush.
And here's the thing, Drayling's not really, his pace isn't that off compared to the rest of the drivers out here. I mean, he's only a 10th off of what second place Ty McWhirter is running. So that 42 machine, it might be a lot of laps down, as he's now only a 10th off of our leader. This 42 machine is quick after getting that engine repaired.
Ryan Strunk's going to move up to the 11th position in a couple of laps. He just passed Zach York for 12th, and now in about 4 laps he'll be moving up to 11th place. So, you know, with a lot of these playoff contenders dropping out, there are going to be some playoff contenders, despite early issues, that will be leaving Darlington with at least a somewhat decent finish.
Yeah, it's so surprising to see. As though we have been staying out here on this green flag run, the drivers that took the wave around, they are going to inch in closer and closer to when they'll need to pit, as Chad Gunsman is about 10 laps away from when he has to pit.
I've been out there 58 laps on his set of tires. As another driver that's going to have to be dealt with here by Boyd Hogan is Chris Noble. This pass will now put Noble as the first car 2 laps down. Noble currently running in the 10th position. Sam, you mentioned that those drivers that took the wave around, they're getting closer and closer to having to make their green flag pit stop here. For guys like Boyd Hogan, Ty McWhirter, they've got about another 30 laps before they have to come to pit road, and based off the calculations, these drivers can definitely make it the rest of the way now on one more pit stop. But the question is, when do they want to come to pit road? Because they could stretch it as far as about 38 laps to go, or they could come to pit road somewhere here in the next 5 to 10 laps and still be able to make it on fuel.
Yeah, it's the window is opening. I think all these drivers are going to be thinking about staying out as long as they can, just in case a caution comes out. I'm just looking around. All these drivers, strategy is kind of in the hands of really Boyd Hogan, of whenever he feels like he needs to come into the pits. I got to give credit to Ty McWhirter at this point. He has kept it closer than the gap was on that first green flag stint. So the 96 machine has made adjustments to help himself out, but Boyd Hogan is still pulling away.
Ty McWhirter currently a little less than 5 seconds back. There's another nearly 2 seconds back to Joseph Piscota. He's got his hands full with Taylor Butcher Benjamin. He just bypassed that 11 machine. John Mullins currently is in the 4th position. He is 9.5 seconds behind race leader Boyd Hogan. And right now, Vincent Arthur is the last driver, at least on tires the same number of laps as the race leader, in that 5th position. He is 15 seconds off the pace. Spencer Tart still trying to hang on to the tail end of the lead lap there in that Mark Martin throwback, but right now he is 28 seconds behind the race leader Boyd Hogan. And as you can see him going here into turn 3, there's Boyd Hogan right behind him, about maybe 5 car lengths back.
Well, speaking of cars that can make it to the end, the 6 just pulled into the pits and looks like he'll be trying to make it to the end here and banking on this thing to go green and possibly for Boyd Hogan to have an issue pop up.
We saw that Justin Levine was really fast there on this past restart, working his way up into the lucky dog position. And I guess now with the fact that, Goodisman and Butcher Benjamin, they ended up getting lapped, he's going to try and maybe jump these drivers and see if he can maybe squeak out a top 6, top 7 finish here today.
You got to try every different thing you can. And for some drivers, they can stay on the same strategy that they were on at the start of the race. For others, they threw out the strategy right when they were put a lap down by Boyd Hogan. Spencer Tart is going to be giving that inside lane and getting out of the way of the 2. As Boyd Hogan puts another car down, and only 5 cars left on the lead lap.
Tart, as soon as he got caught, to be put a lap down, he's bringing his 10 machine to pit road. So this will be potentially the final stop of the day for Spencer Tart. One thing that we were told by the drivers in last night's race was they were surprised, just based on the fact that it was a somewhat shorter race, that they had so many sets of tires at their disposal. 7 sets available for these drivers here tonight for 184 laps, so it gives these drivers a lot of options.
Yeah, a lot of options to work with, but also gives you, I think the admins were thinking, hey, there's a chance this could be a wreck fest. If it is, these drivers are going to want a lot of tires to work with. And right now, they've only needed a couple of sets to work with to make it to the end of this race if we stay green.
Taylor Butcher Benjamin, another driver who had taken the wave around on pit road. And yeah, 100 and nearly 25 laps in the books. We've only had 1 caution here tonight. And that caution came out during a commercial break, which we're going to be stepping aside for again here. Hopefully we're not jinxing it to bring out a second caution here this evening, but we'll keep it here with the action as we go FRN side by side. Don't go anywhere.
Since the VFW was founded, their mission was really to look out for the veterans community, to make sure that our nation upholds its promise to really care for the service member, the veteran, and his or her family. There are several ways that the VFW fights for veterans today. The top services include disability claims assistance, advocacy on Capitol Hill and the Department of Veterans Affairs. We also offer scholarship opportunities, and then also volunteerism. For me personally, when I came back from Iraq, my life experience was drastically different from those around me, and the veterans of foreign wars really spoke to me. The reason I would encourage veterans who have served overseas today to join the VFW is because this is your organization. The VFW is for veterans. Every generation, a new generation of leaders steps up in the Veterans of Foreign Wars and fights for the veterans community.
The Veterans of Foreign Wars. No one does more for veterans. For more information on the VFW, go to ahctv.com/sacrifice.
Welcome you back here to the first playoff race for the Veterans of Foreign Wars Cup Series. We're watching the best battle on track right now, and that's between a couple of drivers that are 2 laps down. The 6th place battle between the Mark Martin throwbacks of Justin Levine and Spencer Tart.
And right now, this is probably the most anxiety-filled racing I have watched in a bit, because we know how hard this 6 is driving. And you got Spencer Tart, who's just been fishtailing it every once in a while. This is for position between those 2 Mark Martin throwback scheme cars, and it's every single time they get close to a car on older tires, it is wild. But it looks like they've got a little bit of clean air before they get up to Chad Gunsman, and Gunsman will most likely get out of the way. For drivers that were on the lead lap just coming in, John Mullins came into the pits a lap ago. Their top 3 only cars on the lead lap. We're waiting for them, and when they will finally try to come in for their most likely final pit stop.
Vincent Arthur was on pit road about 6 laps ago. We saw him hitting pit lane, and he's out there turning lap times about 1.6 seconds faster than race leader Boyd Hogan. Now, obviously, when Boyd eventually decides to make his pit stop, he's going to have the tire advantage, but for a guy that had to take the lucky dog and start the rear of the field, this might be a pretty decent strategy for Vincent Arthur.
Yeah, I mean, I think we both said it when he came into the pits. Hey, that is a great move on his part to come in, because he was the last car on the lead lap before he came in. He wasn't looking like he was going to be put a lap down anytime soon. So gain that time and hope that you have a big enough lead before Boyd Hogan comes flying in to try to steal that lead back. But I love the move by Vincent Arthur and the potential chance of a race-winning move as we inch closer and closer to the end of this race.
Right now, I mean, he can gain positions if we stay green. He's also in the free pass position again, should we get a caution. He's the only car 1 lap down in the 4th position, as this battle will not go away between Levine and Tart. Tart's been the one that's doing a lot of the work, though, trying to be the passer, as he's been into the wall a couple of times these last few laps.
Yeah, I mean, Levine's been trying to do everything he can, but the only problem between the fact that how hard he's pushing to Tart is that he's actually on 4-lap older tires than the 10 machine, so he's actually wearing those tires out a lot quicker than the 10, while Tart is just trying to put pressure on the 6. So as here he comes again. Ryan Strunk looks like he'll be trying to get out of the way, but everyone gets single filed up.
And now Tart's going to cross him over, trying to get to the inside. Another thing we were told tonight that is a key in this race is corner exit, having the momentum, and Spencer Tart nearly spinning it off the corner, but was able to get back to the throttle. He'll complete the pass for 6th place.
And I think Tart's going to just continue to pull away. Other battles that are starting to heat up, that battle for 2nd place. we talked about Piscota and the fact that it looked like he was dropping off at the start of a run. I think he just might have changed up his setup in the way that he wanted it to work for a long run instead of a short run, as the 9 machine is slowly catching up to the 96 of Ty McWhorter.
About 0.8 of a second, now 0.7 here off of turn 4, closing up to the back bumper of the 96 of Ty McWhorter. And yeah, while you look at a lot of these guys up here at the front, like Boyd Hogan, Ty McWhorter, Joseph Piscota, for the most part, they've been out there just trying to either change up their lines or run consistent laps, because they've not had a whole lot of drivers around them to be able to battle for position. The occasional lap machine they catch up to, or the occasional driver on fresher tires goes by them, but they haven't really been able to do a whole lot of battling with each other. They've been really spread out.
Yeah, I've been extremely spread out between everyone out here, and we're now inside of that window of 7 to 8 more laps as far as our top 3 can go, and then they have to come into the pits. Another driver that's going to have to pit is going to be the 77 of Ryan Strunk, and also I think that actually as well as Tom Drayling, he'll have to come in, as he just got by Chris Hansen, who was one of the only drivers who kind of were nervous that he would have to get by. Looking like with all the drivers that are out of this race, that 42 machine could be getting a 13th place finish after his car blew up on lap 10 of this race.
Justin Carey just made his way past Zach York and Caden Rush a couple of laps ago, so right now that 21 is in line for a 12th place finish, albeit 29 laps down, but hey, doesn't matter how many laps down you are, whatever position you finish in is going to get you points.
Over the radio was big old O, and it was from Boyd Hogan, and I think he didn't clobber the wall, but he got really close to the wall, sitting out for that 2 machine, as he's still up to a 10-second gap lead. He does have some right side damage on that 2. He's hit the wall multiple times, so not everyone's had issues. He's gotten their Darlington stripe so far today.
You see it right there on board with the Bruzy Ford Mustang, that damage over there on the right side of your screen, just above the the right front wheel well. Yeah, Boyd Hogan has put on a clinic tonight. There's no doubt about that, but there's no driver that comes here to Darlington, whether they dominate the race or not, that's out there for a Sunday drive. Every single lap, you are having to keep your eyes on what line you are running, how close you are getting to that outside wall, because we've alluded to this multiple times when we come here to Darlington, Sam. This isn't your typical cookie cutter type racetrack. It's an entirely different configuration where turns 1 and 2, the angle is much different than 3 and 4.
Yeah, 1 and 2 is a much longer and wider corner for these drivers to work with. You carry a lot more speed through 1 and 2. 3 and 4 is when you start to back it down. It's a much narrower corner that you kind of have to really hit your entry, or you will be hitting that wall. But with iRacing, actually, with the turns 3 and 4, with how narrow it is, if you hit that wall just right, it will actually give you a boost. Most drivers kind of, it's a taboo thing to do, is that you hit that wall and use it kind of as a boost to get through the corner. But most of the time, these drivers are going to try to stay as clean as possible. As coming in the pits, Boyd Hogan, first out of our top 3.
So Hogan going to hit pit lane, as we saw that battle for 6th going around him. I'll tell you what, we had a late race caution in last night's Rapid Fire Pizza National Series. We're going to have a late race yellow. I think we got to look right around this area with these couple of Ford Mustangs. Justin Levine, Spencer Tart, they have been back and forth for these last 20 laps or so.
Yeah, the big positive thing, they're by themselves. They're nowhere close to anyone else. Drivers that are pretty close to one another that I'm kind of watching and nervous about, as are all of our top 3. Actually, I take that back. Piscota comes in, McWhorter stays out. So McWhorter decides to go an extra lap, so he'll probably be losing a little bit of time, but hoping that these extra 2 laps that the other drivers are on, they'll get an advantage over them.
And now McWhorter going to pit the following lap. And don't forget, McWhorter did a pretty good job on the early portion of that last restart of keeping Boyd Hogan somewhat within striking distance. So he's definitely got a somewhat better short run car. So maybe getting that little bit of an advantage here of fresher tires and lesser laps to go might be what's the plan for this 96 machine.
I don't know where or how Tom Drayling did it, but he somehow stayed out there on those tires and fuel for almost 72 laps. This 42 machine, yes, it's not the day that he wants to have, but really showing off. And some of the things that he's been doing might not be battling for positions out there, but add a fast car that really makes you think, what if that 42 machine did not have his early troubles?
Well, we saw Vincent Arthur and John Mullins both pull strategy of coming to pit road early. The both of them fell a lap down. They just unlapped themselves, but Hogan just got around Mullins for second, and he's only a second and a half behind Vincent Arthur. So, yes, it did give Vincent Arthur an opportunity to lead here tonight, but definitely not the interval he needed to have with the fresh tires of the two behind him.
No, Boyd Hogan really, with how much gap that he was getting on everyone else, this was expected, as he will here make the pass. And, well, I know the audience can't hear it, but I can hear some of the driver chatter. And Vincent Arthur, immediately when he saw that he had the lead, just like, can we have a caution? Is there a possible chance for a caution? Can we just throw out a caution in any form for some random debris, possibly? But a caution did not come out for the 24 machine. Now running second and really in a deficit that will lose a lot of positions. Luckily, there's only 7 cars on the lead lap, but that 24 machine in an awkward position.
Yeah, there's only 3 other drivers behind him as well that have fresher tires than his 24. Mullins has 6-lap fresher tires, and then Piscota and Ty McWhirter have about either 20 or 21 lap fresher tires. We actually did have an exchange for the second position after that cycle of pit stops as well. Piscota able to get around Ty McWhirter and now has that 4th position currently by a second and a half over the 96.
Yeah, battle for 4th place, because for 3rd, Mullins in that 13 machine, after trying some strategy out, has worked out for the 13.
John Mullins, who is making his 4th start of the season and looking for his 3rd top 10. He only led 1 lap so far this year as well, but it's about the best that we've seen him run all season long, looking for his first top 5 of the season. As you said, closing in there on Vincent Arthur, but at the same time, those fresher tires of Piscota and Ty McWhirter are cutting into his advantage very quickly. Still a long ways to go in this one, too. 33 laps, 32 next time around.
Yeah, but I think Mullins did the right move of pitting when he did. He's in 3rd place. Not looking like he's going to be able to keep 3rd or even 4th place. Could be dropping back to 5th place, but a top 5 finish for this 13 machine, not a bad day. And honestly, as long as he doesn't have any issues, I don't see the 6 or the 10 catching up to him anytime soon, because they're battling with one another continuously throughout this run that they had, but the gap has now moved out to almost 3 seconds between the 6 and the 10.
We talk about a number of drivers that are running really well here tonight, despite the fact that they're more than likely not going to win this race. And I think you have to go back here to drivers just in the latter half of the top 10 that fit into that bill as well. Taylor Butcher Benjamin, the regular season champion, right now still soldiering on, 1 lap down in the 8th position. Chad Goodisman right there as well in the 22 in 9th place. Ryan Strunk currently in the 11th position in that 77 car. All that damage he sustained from our only caution so far of the night. And Justin Carey currently in that 12th spot. And oh my goodness, I almost jinxed him as he nearly lost it there off of turn 2. But these are 4 drivers that are playoff contenders that, despite the fact they're not going to be winning tonight, they're going to be getting at least better finishes than they probably would have if we had had a number of our drivers in the garage area still out there on track.
Yeah, I think Carey was kind of open that we'd be seeing some other drivers or a different track possibly, because Darlington has not been kind to the 21 machine. Watching up front, though, the battle for second is on point as you got 3 machines all on top of one another.
Skoda getting around here. It's an Arthur.
13 into Arthur.
And look at the 96 of McWhirter trying to figure out, hey, where do I go with my momentum?
Man, Vincent Arthur has just been having an awful day because he has just been shoved around, uses the bumper constantly from the start of the green to even now during the race.
I mean, that seems fair. He uses the force, they use the bumper. They got to counter the force somehow.
I would hope that maybe he could use some type of force push away from them. But obviously he's using the forced pull and maybe a little bit more training for this one.
Maybe Yoda will have some wise words for the driver of the 24, who loses the 3rd position here to Ty McWhirter. But like I said, it looks like at least for Vincent Arthur, if he's able to finish out this race on the tires that he's got, the furthest back he's more than likely going to fall would be about the 5th position, which is where he's been running for the past 50, 60 laps or so. So, yes, he had an opportunity to gain, but he's not really going to lose either. So that strategy, pretty good strategy, because at least he has an opportunity to see if he can pick up a couple more spots. But looks like he's going to stay pretty much around the top 5 for the remainder of this race. You just saw Boyd Hogan make another pass there on Chad Goodisman, putting him 2 laps down. And with every lap that ticks away here for Boyd Hogan, you gotta wonder, does he want to see this thing go green to the end? Because we know that Joseph Piscotto and Ty McWhirter, they've been pretty good when they've got the fresh tires under them.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine. I mean, Boyd Hogan has been the best car even on the same tires and on these restarts. He just pulls away immediately. And even in the first couple of laps, he's up to a second to 2 seconds on the rest of the field. So he's feeling comfortable, and I don't think there's anyone that's close. I think Richard Reagan Jr. possibly was the driver, or even Caden Rush before he got a lot of damage on that machine, were drivers that I had circled as possible machines that would challenge the 2 here today. But with their early troubles, it's now kind of gifted the 2 where he's at right now. But I want to go back to the 24 and the strategy of him going out there. We've seen a lot of drivers deciding, hey, I'm going to stay out longer than I should. And it might be, maybe it's been hurting them slightly at times. But all these drivers that are in the playoffs, they're trying to get that bonus point of a lap led. And that's why you're seeing a lot of machines trying these different strategies out to be up front. Maybe it's not a race winning move, but it's a move to get at least some type of bonus points.
That's a great point, too, because if we consider both of the Hendrick Motorsports Chevrolets, Piscotto and Arthur, for the last, 5-6 weeks, we've been talking about those 2 trying to battle each other for the final playoff position. We ended up having a driver drop out near the end of the regular season, so that moved both Arthur and Piscotto up into the cut line. But then even as late as Daytona last week, we had Dalton Collins up there potentially being able to take a checkered flag, which would have knocked one of these 2 out of the playoffs. They come into this with no playoff points whatsoever, so to your point, this kind of strategy, definitely what they have to do to make sure they're going to advance to the next round based on the fact that they are at a playoff point deficit to just about everybody else that's in the playoff standings.
No, we talked about Vincent Arthur possibly drifting back to 5th place, but I think those tires might have equaled out between the 24 and the 13, or maybe that contact really actually hurt the 13 more in a way, but it's hard to tell. As 21 of Carey is on fresher tires, is trying to figure out, how do I get by these these lead lap machines, or do I just follow?
Yeah, well, Arthur got the hit from behind earlier, didn't really seem to affect his speed. The damage for that X-Side Chevrolet of John Mullins, who I think may have just brushed the wall there off of 2, that's on the right front. So in terms of aerodynamics, I would certainly think that the push sensation is going to be more so on the side of the 13 than the 24.
Watching these drivers run around, it's always fun on my end listening to the drivers getting their side of things sometimes. And I think every single driver at this point is saying, hey, I think I might be seeing some rain, or I think there's some debris out here. Boyd Hogan's just screaming, no, there's nothing, we're staying green, let's go.
Joseph Piscotto right now is en route for tying his best finish of the season. Had a 2nd place back at Pocono. Ty McWhirter here, a former winner this season, but looking for a great start to his playoffs as well. And I gotta wonder too, I mean, you've got Boyd Hogan up here. He's got teammates he's able to lean on with Chad Goodisman and the 12 of Curtis Sawyer. We know that obviously he also does some technical alliances with Roush Fenway Racing with Justin Levine and Richard Reagan Jr. You got Joseph Piscotto back here. He's got some teammates to be able to lean on, and Vincent Arthur and James Love, but single car team, Gaunt Brothers Motorsports with Ty McWhirter. You kind of have to wonder, dude, who does he have to lean on? Is he the one that's responsible for making all his own setups? I mean, for a single car team, that's got to be pretty difficult.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult at times, but as a single car team, you have that advantage of a way of bouncing to every single team and asking, hey, willing to offer any advice to this track, or hey, you want to give me a setup for me to try out and test and see if I can modify it a little bit? I can scratch your back, you can scratch mine, and that's the advantage of having a single car team, because you don't have to worry about a championship, team championship. All you're worrying about is yourself.
Well, we wondered in the early stages of this race, based off the pace that Boyd Hogan was setting, how many drivers would be on the lead lap when this race is over. Well, we're down to 4, as 5th place John Mullins just went a lap down, and we know that of 24, Vincent Arthur isn't that much farther ahead, so we could have as little as 3 drivers finishing on the lead lap here as we're closing in on 15 laps to go. Let's take a little look ahead here to the final 2 races of this first round. Looking like Boyd Hogan very well could be moving on to the round of 12, but we've got Richmond next week, Bristol the following week. The one thing that I'm noticing here for this first round, Sam, they're all tire shredding tracks.
Yeah, the first one, Darlington, like you've been watching here, tire shredding, and the wall has been not your friend. You go to Richmond, short track racing, and it's all about getting to that yellow line. But Bristol is the wild card, and I love the fact that Bristol is the final course. But for a lot of these drivers that are on the bubble, they are going to be freaking out, because if Bristol, if we have enough drivers there, one accident could be taken out, a possible of almost 6 to almost 10 drivers causing damage, and it really could ruin your day. You want to make sure you are set and locked in by the next round after Richmond, because Bristol is going to be hectic for these drivers.
It's interesting, too, because in this round, the tracks get smaller and smaller. You got the 1.366-mile speedway of Darlington here tonight. You've got the track that's just a little bit over a mile next week at Richmond. And then we go to the world's fastest half mile, the short track of Bristol. So the field is going to get more and more congested as well the closer we get to the end of this first round.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be hard, but I think a lot of these drivers are ready to take the challenge, really, and do the best that they can. And, as the laps are ticking away, Tom Drayling up to 14th now. He's just a couple laps away from getting up to 13th.
And of course, the reason we focus on this, especially, folks, even though Tom Drayling is multiple laps down, is because, in all honesty, the first round of the playoffs is really the toughest, because if you run into an issue in the first race of the first round, it's really difficult to be able to come back from that in the following 2 races, just based on the fact there were so many drivers in the playoffs.
Yeah, if you make a mistake in the first race, you're digging yourself a hole that you have to somehow dig out, and it's going to be hard for these guys. Richard Reagan Jr. Luckily already has a bonus point to work with, but that is still rough for the 17 machine. Oscar Jensen, rough for the 47. There's a lot of machines back here that they're asking for a lot of top 5 finishes in these last 2 races, or possibly a win if they want to move on to the next round.
Yeah, if we use the 16th place driver in the playoff standings as kind of a measuring stick, only 3 drivers came into this race double digits ahead of the 16th position in points. That was Boyd Hogan, Taylor Butcher Benjamin, and Chad Goodisman. The points from there on down really close. 7-point separation from 4th down to 16th in the standings. So a lot of room for drivers to jump up or fall down in the playoff standings. And to your point, Caden Rush, Richard Reagan Jr., some former winners. A lot of work for those drivers to do when we get to Richmond and to Bristol.
Yeah, and it's not good on their end, seeing Piscota and Arthur both having fantastic days today, finishing in the top 5 possibly here. And if they can finish in the top 5, they really are going to be boosting themselves up to make it to that next round. And they just have to continue this momentum. And when you get a top 5 finish at the start of the playoffs, really all you're looking for are top 10 finishes from here on out, and you'll move on to the next round.
And who's to say that drivers like Rush, York, Jensen, Reagan Jr., they aren't going to run into some issues next week at Richmond? The last thing you want to do to make sure you advance into the round of 12 is head into Bristol Motor Speedway in a must-win situation.
And that is the most terrifying sight to be in. I mean, we saw Richard Reagan Jr., he wrecked out when he was 2nd in this race. He had the potential of a top 3 finish here, and it was thrown away in just the first couple of laps for that 17 machine. It's scary, and you never know what race could be the one that knocks you out of the playoffs.
Well, it has been a long race for these drivers here tonight. Closing in on 7 laps to go. 178 laps will be completed of 184. These drivers must be mentally, physically exhausted, but credit these drivers. Yes, we've not been without incident here tonight, but we have gone over 175 laps at Darlington with only 1 caution flag flying. We've seen at least 2 green flag pit stop cycles. It's not the typical type of Darlington race we're used to seeing, but these drivers have done a heck of a job keeping it together.
Yeah, it's been fantastic to watch, and the different gaps for position have really gapped out between all the drivers, and the drivers that have the long run setups really are doing well. The ones that at the short run setups, they have dropped off a lot, just like Justin Levine as well as Spencer Tart. Both those drivers, I mean, just 15 laps ago, they were right on top of one another. Now there's over a 10-second gap between the two, just because of how much difference it is between saving your tires and not saving your tires.
Yeah, the closest battle on track right now is 2 drivers with very old tires. 4th place Vincent Arthur, 5th place John Mullins, and they're separated by 3 seconds. That's the closest battle on track. Every other battle for position is even greater than that. One thing that is not getting greater but is getting lesser is the number of laps left in this race, as 4 laps to go will be on the board for the Blue Deuce of Boyd Hogan. 10-time winner this season, definitely locking himself into the playoffs, and now looking like he's going to have the golden key into the round of 12, not having to worry about what happens at Richmond and Bristol in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what race it was. I think it was the second to last regular season race when Boyd Hogan got his last win. He came on the interview and said, "Hey, I'm out here, yes, going for a championship, but I'm also trying to go out here and win almost every single race." And this 2 machine coming into the playoffs looking really like the best of the class at the moment. And someone that was the only one that was able to get double digits wins on the season, and was the favorite coming into the playoffs, really, of winning this thing. And really, after race number 1, I'm not surprised.
We go all the way back to Kentucky coming into this race. Boyd Hogan has won 4 of the last 6 races and about to make it 5 of the last 7 if he can close out the deal here for 2 more laps. You can see that the nighttime has creeped in. The lights have come on here at Darlington. So Boyd Hogan under the lights looking for that white flag.
It's been a wild race with a lot of cars taken out by Darlington. Not a lot of cautions came out, but a lot of machines tore up as the Darlington stripes have kicked in for most of these drivers. At turn number 4, white flag in the air for the two machine.
I'd be very surprised if there isn't a single car in the field that doesn't have some damage in some way, shape, or form, whether it be the outside wall here at Darlington or contact between drivers on track. Even our race leader, Boyd Hogan, with the battle scars there on the right front quarter panel just above the wheel. As through 3 and 4, Boyd Hogan will look for his league-leading 11th win of the season, and he will be advancing into the round of 12, taking the checkered flag here tonight at the Lady in Black.
And that's just a beautiful race for that 2 machine. It was mostly green flag racing and putting every single driver a lap down except for himself and 2 other machines. Your top 3, the only cars on the lead lap. And I think the one driver that's happy to see this race is over has got to be the 24 of Vincent Arthur. That was the pinball machine. He was practically the pinball of this whole entire race here today.
Yeah, he more than likely should have been wrecked, if not once, twice in this race, and somehow was able to keep it straight and got the recipient of the free pass under the only caution we had here today, able to get a top 5 run. And Hogan advances, but you also got to look at guys like Piscota, McWhorter, and Arthur. These were huge points days here tonight for them, heading into our next 2 races of this first round.
Well, we know who punched their ticket for the second round. Boyd Hogan has done it. Piscota, a fantastic run for himself, McWhorter, as well as Arthur. And those 4 machines really have set themselves up for a great run here in the playoffs.
For Piscota, McWhorter, and Arthur, I wouldn't say this definitely gives them a little bit of a cushion to maybe have some problems at Richmond next week, but they certainly have more leverage than a number of other drivers do when we eventually get to that racetrack is Boyd Hogan burning it down here. We talk to drivers and they say they want to win at those crown jewel racetracks. Darlington is one of those four, and well, the engine's gone on Boyd Hogan's car now. But, you got to wonder, just based off of the tracks that Boyd Hogan's been able to win at this season, where this one might rank up on his 11 wins.
I mean, Darlington, for a lot of drivers, it's, like I said, top 3 tracks, top 5 for most. But Darlington, such a tricky course, and really was mastered in a way for the two.
What a performance here tonight for Boyd Hogan. Not without incident, as we saw, but boy, he certainly had the setup for the short run, the long run, what have you, to tame the Lady in Black here tonight. And we'll be talking with him in just a moment. We're also going to get a word with some of our other top 3 finishers. And let's kick things off with Ty McWhirter in the 96. Hey, Ty, it's Sam and Seth up here in the Flatout Racing Network studios. You got us?
Yeah, I got you.
Well, I mean, coming into the playoffs, first race of the playoffs here at Darlington Raceway, the first thing I got to ask you is, knowing the reputation a track like Darlington has and knowing that 184 laps stand between you and the checkered flag, what is the mindset as a playoff driver knowing this is the first race?
Well, yeah, that was an absolutely grueling intro to the playoffs right there. But hats off to everybody. That's a fantastic race, some very clean race. And, the car it held up all 184 laps. It was just fantastic out there.
Ty obviously bringing it home third place here today. Maybe one of the cleanest cars in the field as well, but it looked like you spent a good portion of this race kind of riding by yourself. You had the occasional lap car to pass. Was that actually more of a preference to you, being able to just focus on entering into the corners the way you wanted to, rather than having to deal with the push-up on the inside line or having to deal with the wall on the outside line of side-by-side racing?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, just being able to race the track, is one thing. Just being able to focus on the corners and not hitting the wall, especially in 3 and 4. The lap cars, they were great out there tonight, but yeah, it was just really good out there, and being able to just focus was a big thing tonight.
Yeah, I mean, we saw some green flag pit stops going underway. Was that a tricky moment for you coming into pit road?
Oh yeah, the pit road here is absolutely treacherous. I practiced that multiple times. I'm still not sure. I think in the 2 green flag stops that we had, I don't really know if I even really nailed it or not. But yeah, it was very tough to get on pit road tonight.
Well, Ty, obviously, this gives you really good points heading into Richmond, which more than likely, being that middle race, is going to be the deciding factor into setting us up for who's going to be advancing, who is not, when we get to the world's fastest half mile at Bristol Motor Speedway. But it's got to give you at least a little bit of a confidence boost, knowing that you've racked up these points in the first race, heading into tough tracks like Richmond and Bristol in the next 2 weeks.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because this is absolutely gonna be the toughest round of the playoffs with the tracks we have coming up, and I think just getting through Darlington was kind of a sigh of relief. So we'll be able to move on to Richmond here, and then see what we can get done there.
Well, Ty McWhirter is going to start off the playoffs with a third place run here tonight at Darlington. Congrats on a tremendous run there, Ty. We're going to let you do some shout outs now.
Yeah, I'd like to thank veterans of Foreign Wars, Soda Guys, iRacing iFlag, Shorba's Racing Graphics, FSM Customs, and Abiding Love Memorial Urns.
Well, Ty McWhirter may have been running a 2019 throwback here tonight, but in 2020, he is a podium finisher at Darlington and puts himself in good stead here in this first round of the playoffs. Congrats again on a great run. We look forward to seeing how you can follow this up when we get to Richmond next week.
Thanks, guys.
And let's see if we can get a word with second place finisher Joseph Pascoda. Hey, Joseph, it's Sam and Seth up here in the Flatout Racing Network studios. You got us?
Yeah, I got you guys.
Well, you tie your best finish of the season, second place here tonight. And one thing that we talked about was the fact that you and your Hendrick Motorsports teammate, Vincent Arthur, came into this race with no playoff points. So how important was it to get a finish like this here tonight in the first race of the playoffs?
Oh, it was huge. I know I was going to be the 16th seed after Daytona, and I just knew I had to really perform, put a lot of work in the car. And I knew where I was going, going into this race. I knew where I was at, and I just knew I had to qualify good because I know it's hard to pass and stay up there and hopefully get lucky because those opening laps were crazy, and we did. So P2, and it was a really, really good car. So I'm really happy with that.
One thing that we observed was after green flag pit stops and also on that only restart that we had here tonight, Both you and the 96 seem to be really set up well for the short run. If we had had a late race yellow and you guys gotten all lined up for maybe a 10-lap shootout, did you have anything on the short run for the 2-car?
Possibly. We would have done some adjustments. Boyd was really fast all race, and he really showed it. But we fired off really well, and we worked on that throughout the week as well. And I just wanted to make sure that we had a long run speed as well. But on the short run, we probably would have done some adjustments. We would have given it our best shot. But we were really good. So and the package keeps you up close for a while. So I definitely would have tried, and maybe something could have happened. Who knows?
Yeah, Joseph, it was a great night for you. Top three finish, awesome for the playoffs. But during this race, I think the most nerve wracking thing was watching drivers all on their different tires of freshness. How was it for you trying to drive around cars that you were lapping down and then also having cars closing up on you on fresher tires?
Yeah, that was one thing that I was really concerned about by usually the first green flag run. I didn't realize how quickly I was going to catch people, or people were going to quickly catch me, and I was constantly looking in my mirror and looking forward, and that's really tough to do on old tires or fresh tires. You don't want to fence it and get it in the wall, and you got to be really careful, and you got to know when to let people go, and you got to know when to go for it. So I try to do all my passing and let it go on the straightaway. And not go too wide going into these corners because they're really tight, and we just wanted to keep it off the wall and off people.
Well, Joseph, we were told what the fuel window was for the drivers, about 65 to 67 laps. We saw a number of drivers, including yourself, kind of stretch it to that point. Just how worn were the tires when you got up to the end of the fuel cell?
Yeah, this track is like a sand grader on these tires. When you're running the tank as far as you can, the car is very, very loose. It's pushed loose. It goes in the corner really tight, and it gets off loose because you're just wearing the right sides off so much. Going into these pit stops, you're like, I want to pit now, but I can't, or vice versa. But yeah, those tires on those long runs are just you just get them so worn out, and it's so hard enough to hit the wall on the old tires too. But yeah, this track is just not nice to tires.
Well, Joseph, they're currently putting together the playoff standings right now, heading into Richmond. Right now, you're sitting up there P5 with a nice little cushion between yourself and that 12th position in the standings. So a great start here to your playoffs. We're going to do some shout-outs now.
Yeah, I got to thank you guys first of all, and the VFW for coming on board, and Shorber's Racing Graphics, FSM Customs, and Abiding Memorial Earns. And I got to thank, Legacy Esports in Abrizi, and RocketRacingSetups.com, and everybody at Legacy did a great job in building this car, and I got to thank all of them, and you guys too, for putting on a great show.
Well, that's Joseph Piscota. He puts his Hendrick Motorsports Chevrolet P2 to start off the playoffs here tonight at Darlington. Congrats on a great run. We look forward to seeing how you can follow this up when we get to Richmond, Virginia next week.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
And let's go down to Victory Lane, where Boyd Hogan celebrates for an 11th time this season, but for the first time in the playoffs. Hey, Boyd, it's Sam and Seth up here in the Flatout Racing Network studios. You got us?
Yes, sir.
Well, we saw you burn that thing down to the point where the engine blew up. I don't think we've seen you do that quite so much this season. Pretty excited to get this win, I would assume.
Yeah, there was a lot of work put into it. So it's definitely one of the biggest wins that we've got here in this series for sure.
Now, you had 10 wins on the regular season, definitely locking yourself here into the playoffs. Now with this win here at Darlington, you're already locked into the round of 12. So what's the mindset going into Richmond and Bristol in the next 2 weeks?
Sweep. That's the plan. Started working on a Richmond car about a week ago. I think we got a good base going into next week, and I've always loved Bristol. I had to build a car there about a month ago, so I think we got good bases at least to go into the weeks with for sure. The cars have been really, really fast here lately. Yeah, it's just with the next round having the road course in it, you can never be too safe. So I'm just trying to pile up as many playoff points as what we can, and hopefully kind of cancel out that road race.
Yeah, Boyd, it seems like you've just been on a winning streak and the most wins of all the drivers With the new build that's coming for iRacing next week, do you feel like that's going to be anything that could possibly hinder you from getting the next couple of wins that you're wanting?
Um, I think it all kind of depends on what's in it. Luckily I have a lot of free time on my hands here recently. So I'll I'm fairly confident I can figure it out, whatever it is, whatever kind of challenge gets thrown at us. I got the best team in the business behind me, so you know, it's uh, it's not anything I'm too worried about. But it could definitely be a challenge for sure.
Well, boy, tonight you definitely put on a clinic, a very dominating performance, but we did see you had a little bit of battle scars there on the right side of your machine. The lady in black not letting you leave without getting a Darlington stripe. But was there any struggle in the handling of the race car out there in front?
I mean, it was a little free, but you kind of had to be set up that way, just in case you get stuck back in traffic. The arrow push here, like I was telling you earlier today, Seth, it's it's pretty bad here. So I was just trying to make sure that we wouldn't have to deal with too much of it. And I mean, the car was on a rail. There's been a lot of time put into it, and I can't thank everybody at Legacy Esports enough. Everybody on Slip Angle, Ray Alfala, myself, Santi Torres, everybody who's kind of put time in here this week. Jake Nichols. There's been a lot of preparation, obviously, going in with Coke being on Tuesday. And I usually don't bring these cars out, but as you guys know, not coming back next year. And as soon as I got informed on that and the reasoning for it, it's time to come out and do exactly what they've been saying I've been doing all year and keep kicking ass.
Well, you definitely did that here tonight. A very dominating performance for your Blue Deuce. Obviously Kurt Busch came up just short back in 2003 of getting a victory here at Darlington, but you got a win for him tonight in spirit there in that very beautiful throwback. We're going to let you do some shout-outs now, Boyd.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, you touched on it. Austin Derbyshire knocked this one out of the park. It's the nicest paint scheme I think I've brought to this series. And we got an inverted one we're bringing out for Richmond. It'll be white and blue rather than the blue and white. And I'm really excited about it. Richmond, Bristol, two favorite tracks for sure. RocketRacingSetups.com. Obviously, we put on quite a clinic tonight, but overall in the official series, the whole website, everything that we got on there has been putting on clinics here for the last couple years, and I just got paired up with them building cup stuff. So anybody who wants to get in on that and kind of get rid of VRS, because I mean it's really not that good. There's some really premium sets in there. So anybody after that, go to RocketRacingSetups.com. You'll start winning a hell of a lot more for sure. Everybody on Legacy, as I mentioned, Judd Danielson had a bruisey, butt kicker, and again, I can't thank Austin Derbyshire enough. Derbyshire Media, go give them a like on Facebook. Absolutely incredible paints. My roommate Steve, he's always watching, as you guys know, and can't thank him enough for all his support as well.
Well, one driver we know is going to be battling for the championship. Moving on to the round of 12 is Boyd Hogan. He takes the checker flag here tonight in the VFW Cup Series at Darlington Raceway. Congrats on a great run, Boyd, and we look forward to seeing what you're going to be able to do with the pressure off of you when we get to Richmond next week and Bristol in 2 weeks' time.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
And so the first race of the playoffs is in the books, Sam, and, Darlington, we heard Pascotas say, just basically looking at that track as the first race of the playoffs and going into it with a mindset of survival. I think a lot of drivers had that same mentality, and it's definitely split the field up into drivers that look like they might be okay heading into Richmond and drivers that really are in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be losing 4 drivers here in the next 2 weeks. So it's one of those things of if you've had a bad week, you need to hit your mark every single one of these next 2 races. And if you falter at least once, you're one of those drivers that will not make it to the next round. For these guys that have already put on good shows, it's now just survive and get a top 10, top 5 finish, and you will probably put yourself in a top 12 position. So these drivers that are in tricky situations, it's more of stay focused, reset, and hit your marks moving forward.
Some of the drivers will be highlighting next week that officially are going to be going into Richmond below the cut line. Chris Hansen right now, the first driver out. Richard Reagan Jr., that's a big one there. He's currently the second driver out, followed by Oscar Jensen. And James Love right now is 16th in the playoff standings as his 88 didn't even make the grid here tonight. So We will definitely be keeping an eye on those drivers, see if they can turn their luck around and get above that cut line when we get to Richmond next week. But 184 laps here tonight at Darlington, only one caution in the middle of the entirety of it. Some unbelievable racing from green to checkers. And Sam, I appreciate you joining me for all 184 laps of it.
It's always a pleasure there, Seth.
Next week, we're going to be having the Rapid Fire Pizza National Series drivers. They're going to be at Richmond International Raceway. That is going to be, I believe, their next to last race of the regular season, as they're getting closer and closer to determining their playoff grid. Nope, I'm sorry. That is their regular season finale. So their playoff grid will be determined next week. And of course, Richmond will be where the VFW Cup Series drivers will be at for their second race of the first round of the playoffs. Thanks, everyone, for tuning into tonight's race, though. We hope you enjoyed it. For Samuel Dyer, I'm Seth Cole, and you've been watching another broadcast here this evening, courtesy of the Flatout Racing Network.